Hi, I'm Jack Carr, and I'm the CEO of the Jack Carr Real Estate Team and former member of the New Brunswick Legislature and also a board member of the Village of Hope. Thank you to Pastor Neil Horner, the host of the Woodstock Wesleyan Church's Thursday Night Live, for featuring the Village of Hope. My wife Cheryl and I first became aware of the Village of Hope when I was running for election in 2008. The founders had a public meeting with over 200 people in attendance. Previous to that, I ran in the general election, along with my and my wife's family history of family addiction, I guess, like a lot of New Brunswick families. We knew firsthand the need to have a faith-based, long-term residential drug and alcohol addiction facility. After winning the 2008 election as MLA, I saw even more of the struggles families face with addiction, the lack of support and services, and the lack of hope. The Village of Hope fills some of that void. The Village of Hope provides just that, hope for families, moms and dads, and children of addicts. The Village of Hope has been operating in Estonia for 18 years and in New Brunswick for over 10 years. It offers a safe place for men and their families to get help. It turns takers into givers. The operating costs are paid for mostly by donations, and it's an amazing place where miracles happen every single day, and it's a one-of-a-kind facility in Atlantic Canada. The need is great, and I'm so pleased the Village of Hope continues to grow based on support from the government, from volunteers, and funding partners. The latest study by the Canadian Centre for Substance Use estimates that the Canadian national and provincial governments and Canadians spend over $38 billion a year on substance use, whether it's healthcare costs, the criminal justice system costs, the loss of productivity, or other costs. And in New Brunswick, the government and taxpayers spend nearly $1 billion a year. That's close to $1,300 a year for every New Brunswicker. So the need is great, and even more so during these tough pandemic times. So thank you to Andrew and Erica and Mart and Alta Vahi and all of the staff, the families, the volunteers and partners of the Village of Hope. And thanks to the Woodstock Wesleyan Church. I know you'll be inspired by the conversation on this edition of Thursday Night Live.
Well, hi guys, it's a privilege to have you with us tonight, and we're so glad you've taken the time. This is Andrew Vahi and Greg Rasmussen from the Village of Hope in Tracy, New Brunswick. Village of Hope, they'll tell you lots more about it, but Village of Hope is a treatment center for drug and alcohol addiction, and they've been operating for several years now. Guys, I'd love to hear just a little bit about each of you so our guests can get to know you tonight. So who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Greg. You can introduce yourself there.
My name is Greg Rasmussen. Just when I grew up in Virginia and lived there till I was 18, got involved in a certain level of drug addiction. Mostly experimentation. Then I moved to Florida to try to get away from all the people I was around and the environment, thinking that would solve my problem, but it only multiplied it. Trying to fit in with new people and make new friends. I found the same people, same problems. No matter where I go, there I am. So I ended up at 23 years old, addicted to crack cocaine and cocaine. Using every day and homeless. Found myself in a program, got my life back together, and I've been given the opportunity to be a part of Village of Hope since day one. Worked here, I've been doing my own recovery for 14 years of clean time and trying to help other people to experience the same freedom that I have been granted. So,
Amazing. Thanks, Andrew. Let's hear from you.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Neil, for having us and for actually putting this together. I think it's a great idea to have some of these discussions and to be able to, just get the focus on some of these things that aren't always seen. Right now, we're fighting a big pandemic in the world with COVID-19, but we've been on this journey of the fighting against the pandemic of addictions for quite some time now. Greg and I both in our own lives, but also through the Village of Hope, helping others. And so I really want to thank you for putting this together, because I know that, even though in New Brunswick you don't always see the problem that we have out on the streets and so on like you would in big cities necessarily, but there is a big problem here in the province and in the Maritimes with addictions, drugs and alcohol, and so for people to know that there's a place out there that they can go to, or a network of places that they can go to, and that there is help and there is hope, I think is very, very important. So we appreciate that. We started the Village of Hope here in 2008. Just basically, we're given a beautiful piece of property out in Tracy, New Brunswick, with it's 200 acres on both sides of the north branch of the Ormocto River. And we have a little maple sugar shack there too, where we do our maple syrup each year. We have an operating sawmill on site. We've built roads here. We've built houses, buildings, cabins for the men. So the men have what we call bunk houses, but they're much nicer than the dorms where I went to college, in fact. But we've been able to build all these buildings and assets here over the years to establish kind of a foundation, a place where we can help guys and their families that are struggling with drug and alcohol addiction. And we actually started it back in 2002. The first Village of Hope is in the country of Estonia, just south of Finland. And so we started there as a missions project, because, I've traveled all around the world, and everywhere you go, people are people, and drugs and alcohol and addiction are a problem. And that problem is growing these days. And so there needs to be more and more answers, more and more solutions to that problem. And so we started that in 2002. We used my great-grandfather's lands. Estonia was a former communist country, and so we claimed back the lands from the communists, and we donated them to the charity that we formed, Village of Hope. And we started building. We built in roads and power lines and houses and everything else. And we took in guys that were primarily at that time were heroin addicts and alcoholics that we were focusing on. We weren't focusing on it, but that was the main problem in their society. And today that place is going strong for almost 18 years now. We have a strong leadership there, have a business on site, the sawmill. We have I think it's the only fire department in the world that's run out of a recovery center. So very interesting. We go on about 50 calls a year, helping our community. And these are all guys that were former heroin addicts, drug addicts, just throwing their lives away. And so I'm very proud to keep that connection with them in Estonia as a team, but they continue to do very well there. And I think they have on an average about 30 people in the program there. They usually have about 20 men and 10 women. And in New Brunswick here, we can have up to 20 men in the program. We don't have women right now, but looking at that option here as well, now that we've done it as a trial in the country of Estonia. So, yeah.
I guess my first question after that would be, why would anyone choose to give their life and their time to serving people in addiction? I can't think of a lot of more difficult tasks that someone would choose to do. What made you guys get into this?
For me, it was I was lost, and I had no idea how to live my life. I had no idea what was even wrong with me, why I couldn't stop. I felt like there was no hope, felt like there was no direction. I was helpless and hopeless and just lost. And then when people started working with me, for really no reason, I had nothing, and I had spent my whole life pushing everybody away and learning how to protect myself from other people. I really started to feel valuable again. I started to connect with a part of myself that I felt like died a long time ago when I was a kid, and started feeling alive for the first time. And the only reason is because other people decided that I was worth it for whatever reason. It didn't make any sense to me at first. Later, I found out God had called these people and empowered them to reach out and give hope to other people like me. At one point, when Andrew and Mart were getting ready to start Village of Hope here in New Brunswick, they shared a story about the man who donated the land. And they said he sat in a chair, and he said, of all the land in New Brunswick, God would choose my land to build a Village of Hope. And he was so happy and so blessed that God would choose his land, the 200 acres. And most people would think, God, why my land? Why not choose his land? They would kind of grumble about it, but he was blessed that God would choose his land. And I remember thinking, of all the people that I know that die in their addiction, why am I still alive? Why didn't I die? And it's the same principle. And God spoke to my heart when they were sharing, and he said, of all the people that do die in their addiction, I've chosen you. He said, wherever I send you, you share a message of hope that I'm building within you. Hope for grandmothers, hope for mothers, fathers, sons and daughters, even men who are lost. That it's not the end. There's hope. You can change. You can be better. If I can get out of that life that I was in and that hole that I was in, I would love to bring other people to experience what I'm experiencing today, because it is possible. So I think just to be able to reach down and lift up somebody who's hurting and fallen and help get them back on their feet is one of the most, it is hard, but it's one of the most rewarding jobs in the world, I believe.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And my story is very similar. I, as a young guy, just got into drugs and alcohol, quite young actually, even before my teen years started. And, I grew up in a good home and everything and so on. But you just got into it as a means of fun, curiosity, fun. You're doing with your friends, it's a bit of freedom. And after a while, the problem was, as I started to use it as a way to escape all my problems. Any negative emotions I didn't like facing and dealing with. I knew I could go to the drugs. I knew I could go to the alcohol. So after a while, it wasn't so much just something I did for fun, but it became something I depended on. And of course, I never planned it to turn out that way. And I think, there's not one person that grows up as a little child and says, when I get big, I want to be a drug addict. I want to be an alcoholic when I get big. Nobody ever talks about that stuff. Nobody says those things. So in the same way, you get ensnared into something that you thought was freedom for you, and then it becomes the very thing you're enslaved to eventually. And once I found that there was hope for me and that I could change, I thought, man, I just want to do what I can out there to bring the same message of hope to others. And then God just sort of connected me with people along the way to get the training that I needed, to train in a model. I actually went to Florida, trained in 2 different programs there. One was Bridges of America in Orlando, and the other one was Dunk Memorial Church in Okeechobee, Florida, which was there for, I think, going on to 55 years or something like that. So they had a lot of experience, and so I learned everything I could, and then we took that and used it as a model to build in Estonia and now here in New Brunswick.
Can you just maybe give us a bit of a feel for Village of Hope? What's unique? What's different about Village of Hope? What's the program like? Greg?
The program is based on relationships. So in order to function in addiction of any kind, whether it's chemicals or shopping. You have to push people away from you that will challenge your thinking, challenge your behavior. So you measure addiction by the damage it does to the relationships in your life. So Village of Hope is centered around teaching men how to be in healthy relationship with God, with themselves, and with other people. If you're in a healthy relationship, that requires trust. So to trust somebody else to be vulnerable with them is difficult for most people in addiction, because they're used to being alone and doing whatever they want, however they want, whenever they want, and not really having to answer to anybody or be accountable to anyone, because to do so would, they'd have to be vulnerable and trust somebody to allow them that position in their life. So when they come here, they're at a point where they no longer trust themselves to make healthy decisions. So the only other option is keep going in the lifestyle they were, which probably land them either dead or in jail or another institution, or start to trust and open up and learn a different way of living.
Mm-hmm.
So they live in the dorm and they build relationships with each other where they have to hold each other accountable, but also be held accountable. And then we walk with them through the process. So for 2 hours a day, they're in a classroom learning principles and information. And then the other part of the day, they're on a job site or in the dorm, getting into relationship struggles, getting into arguments. And then as a staff, we're there to oversee and help them learn how to process through it in a healthy way, how to react to the emotions they're feeling, how to ask for forgiveness, be humble, stop fighting for your right to be right, stop arguing so much. This is not healthy. This is going to drive you right back to the lifestyle you're trying to get out of. So we're with them all day trying to teach them principles of overcoming their emotions in a healthy way and how to be in relationship with each other that produces a deeper level of relationship than most of them have ever had.
Yeah, and we always say too, like in the program, is that your true program begins with a relationship with God, and so it's out of that. We always say that true change happens from the inside out. And it's one thing to modify your behavior and so on, but what Greg's talking about is change from the inside out. Working on who we are and how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to others, and how we relate to God. Those are all very foundational things in the program. So the guys, the guys actually come live there for 10 months, right on site. We have dorms where they live and do our work on site, classrooms every day, and so on. And what we're looking at adding here also this year is some family cabins. So we want to put on site. We were given some cabins last year that we're going to build sort of as guest houses this year, and because we do a family recovery process. So this is where wives and kids can come on the weekends too and go through this family process together, because you can't live in the same home with somebody in addiction and not have it affect you in one way or another. You see, and that's the biggest lie that an addict believes, is that my actions don't affect anybody but myself. Well, they affect everybody around us that loves us and cares about us, and it begins to hurt them. And even these interventions, a lot of time, is simply bringing an inward crisis to the outside, to the forefront, where somebody can identify with it and recognize that, I've inflicted this pain. So we're going to build those cabins here this year. Want to be able to have families coming out and being a part of the program, where they can grow together and get the healing that they need. Especially a wife that's out there trying to raise 2 kids while the guy's in the program. This is a way that they can do that, and she can be a part of the process as well. And the kids, you'll see a change in them as well. So those are just, we're not trying to compete with any other programs. I think that we need to all work together, because we're really, this isn't the kind of business where you compete with each other. You're all on the same side. And so a win for one program is a win for all of us, because we just want guys to make it and to have a good life and to fulfill their destiny and to not destroy their lives with this other stuff and drugs and alcohol and so on. So we're not really in competition. It's just we're doing what we felt like God led us to do, and we're kind of using those places where I trained as a model, and that includes the family recovery process and industry on site and things like our staff. We all live here too, right on site. So in COVID, we're already kind of isolated here on site anyways. All the guys in the program have just kind of continued their normal life right here on site. We just isolate the entire area and just had no visitors and so on. But most of our staff live right here too. So it does become, like we call it, the Village of Hope. It becomes like a small community where we're working with these guys and their families, and we kind of do life together.
Cool. Why do you think it's really important to talk about addiction during this time of isolation and separation?
Nobody likes to be alone. Feeling alone is a horrible feeling for anybody. We like, deep down inside, we're created with the need to be loved and to love other people, and to be connected to other people. Being isolated is a difficult emotion. There's a lot of emotions that get triggered inside of individuals during this time, I think. You can't hug somebody, you can't go hang out at the mall, you can't go blow off some steam or go work out at the gym. Your whole routine is flipped upside down. A lot of the things that you found security in, a lot of the things that you trusted to make you feel good, now you can't have access to them the same way. And so that creates a lot of emotions, a lot of feeling lost. What direction do I do? How do I get through this? Overwhelmed and alone. And so it's really a great opportunity to develop new addictions. If you're trying to outrun or avoid all those feelings, you don't know how to deal with those feelings, and you don't know what avenues to reach out, or if there's people out there that you can reach out to. I think it's important that people know that even if you call somebody and talk to them, try to be vulnerable, try to be open, try to look inward at, okay, why am I having such a hard time right now? What's missing in my life that normally wouldn't be missing, or maybe something that's been missing for a long time? And what is it that I'm used to filling that void with? Because I think that there's people that may not have been in addiction. They may have been experimenting or just having fun with their friends. And as you amp up the negative emotions, they may have a tendency to drive further into addiction and keep seeking out unhealthy behavior during the time of isolation. So I think it's important for them to know that they're not alone, to know that they're not the only ones struggling. If you feel that, reach out to people, find out what other people are doing, or even, if you're an initiative type of person, start a group of people that, or Facebook chat or something where you can be vulnerable and open and get support and feedback from other people. Let's really rally around each other. We need relationships the most. I think social media is a great tool if used properly, and it can be a great support for people that are struggling during the COVID outbreak.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's, we are created with that need for a relationship. And the problem with drugs and alcohol is I can remember as a young guy, that was one of the first things that started to, as I got into drugs and alcohol, I started to lose all my relationships. I started to not hang around the same people. I quit all my team sports, and so I became very isolated. So really, in the end, the very thing I didn't want, that's where I ended up. The very small group of friends hanging out in an apartment together, getting high. That really wasn't what I wanted. And I think we can see this in this time of isolation. People, alcohol sales are up, the cannabis NB sales are up. There's a lot of people out there who aren't employed right now. who don't know, if things are going to change. So they're lacking in hope, and so they don't know what to trust in, and so that can be an easy escape. But it's not really what we want in the end, because we want relationships. I think about that movie with Castaway, and here he is, Tom Hanks has got this volleyball, Wilson, and he's crying, because Wilson is just floating away. And that was his only friend for years. Made friends with this volleyball, but that just shows human beings and our need for relationship. And so that's definitely a tough challenge during this time. And we got to use everything we can. My daughter is even doing play dates with their cousin in Saskatchewan now through FaceTime, and things like that. And so they're playing with dolls together through FaceTime. So we got to just do whatever we can to figure a healthy way to sort of cope with this, isolation and things that we have to put up with right now.
I think you guys both mentioned how hard the impact that addiction has on the people around the person who is battling the addiction, and the tendency to think that it only affects them. What would you say tonight to the friend or family member? It could be the mom or dad, could be a brother or sister, could be a spouse, of someone who they see either is full blown into this, or maybe they're seeing some warning signs. What would you say that they could do? What would you say to offer them some hope?
The biggest thing would be to let the person know that they're still loved. Despite everything that they've done that hurt, despite everything they've done to destroy the relationship, to end up all alone, to let them know that they're still loved. And not to get caught up in trying to save the person. That's God's job. Sometimes we want to try to do something to take away their pain or help them not experience the consequences of their actions. But it may just be saying, look, I love you. I care about you. I pray for you all the time. I'm still hoping that the relationship we have can deepen and grow. I still desire time with you. But at this point, based on your actions, I can't do that, even though the desire is still in me. That will never change. My love for you will never change. But how close I can let you get has changed. I think in the core message of, something has to change in your behavior and it's not acceptable, still needs to remain the fact that that person is desired and wanted and loved and accepted, no matter what. They're still a person. Sometimes like Andrew had said before, the relationship with ourselves, sometimes we think badly about ourselves because we feel like we failed, we screwed up, we're like the bottom of society, and there's no redemption for what we've done. Who could ever love us? And so I think the message of hope is that no matter what you've done, you're still loved, you're still accepted, and it's not too late to make changes.
Can you give us a bit of a picture into the addict's mind and how they function? What is it about drug and alcohol addiction that is so hard to beat?
So if you take diabetes, for example, the common question is addiction a sin or a disease? And reality is it's both. So diabetes, you get diabetes because of poor lifestyle choices. You make choices that are unhealthy, and then you end up developing diabetes. So once you have diabetes, Now you have to manage it. Now, in managing diabetes, you have to take blood sugar readings. You have to know where you're at with your disease, and change your lifestyle if you want to be healthy. Doesn't mean you can't still be healthy and do all kinds of things and live a very productive life, but you have to be aware of where you're at in relation to the diabetes. And sometimes people with it, diabetes gets cured when they change their lifestyle. They end up coming out of it. Addiction is, we end up with a disease of the brain and the thinking based on bad lifestyle choices. So we wire our subconscious to trust certain behaviors and things. We trust them, we build a relationship with them in order to make ourselves feel good. So we avoid any emotions that we don't want to feel, and we do actions that make us feel the opposite of what we're trying to avoid. So if I'm trying to avoid depression or sadness or feelings of loneliness or guilt, I'll do actions that are risky, get my adrenaline going. With some of those behaviors, things like I'll fall into anger. All these kind of behaviors start to show up before I ever start using. So most of the time, some people, they just live in that angry state where they don't like anybody, they don't want anybody around, they push everyone away, but over time, they've become that way because they continue to choose that behavior to try to make themselves feel good, and eventually even that doesn't work, and they progress into drugs, alcohol, all those kinds of things. So addiction in the mind of an addict, they don't even really realize what they're doing. They're not using at the end of it because they want to feel good anymore. They're using because they just want to be normal. And their attempt to be normal is to use drugs or risky behavior or whatever their addiction is. They're running to that because it makes them feel like they're normal, like they fit in with everybody else. So,
yeah, and if you look at human nature too, I mean, we let's face it, we're going to go the easiest route possible. If we can, right? If we can go through the drive-through or have it delivered, right now we have to do those things. But normally that'd be our first choice anyways, because it's just easier, even before this COVID, the drive-through windows were always lined up, and it's just human nature. We want to do things the easiest way. And if we can avoid dealing with stuff that we just don't want to deal with, we're going to find a way to do that, And if the guys that come to Village of Hope are guys that, they get to a point in their life where, one, they can't trust themselves anymore because they know even my friend's mother used to tell us, she'd say, boys, if I give you enough rope, you're going to hang yourself. And she was right. I mean, we would always get in so much trouble, but you get to the point where you say, look, I can't trust myself. I know if I have some freedom, I know if I have a window of opportunity, I'm going to use it. Like I'm going to do the wrong thing. And so those are usually when you get to that place, you're thinking, I need somewhere long-term, somewhere safe where I can go and deal with stuff. This is getting out of hand for me. And also, when you just get to a place where you're just sick and tired of that behavior. I mean, those are the only guys that are going to change. So in other words, we've experienced enough negative results. It's like, now I have to change. But the funny thing is people will wait until the very last step, before we have to go and do something about it. But the sooner we address these issues in our life, the less we lose, hopefully we don't have to lose everything to realize that this is a serious problem and that I need to do something about it. I mean, and that's one thing with the family recovery process too. Hopefully you don't wait until you lose your family until you decide I'm going to do something about my addictions. Because the longer we keep things in secret and the longer we do that and we prolong the inevitable of it coming out, the worse it gets. And we always think I can deal with this on my own. I can keep it quiet. But it just gets worse. And eventually it's showing up everywhere. It's showing up, on the side of the road with the DUI. It's showing up in the courthouse. It's showing up, causing marriage problems and everything else. So, that's human nature is we don't want to face things if we don't have to. You know, if we can get away with something, we'll probably try to get away with it. But in dealing with addiction, that's something that's going to keep us getting worse and worse all the time. And eventually we need to take ownership and say, you know, I need to do something about my life. I need to make a decision, and I got to get some help, whether it's attending a group somewhere, right now, even virtual groups or whatever it is, or start the process of getting into a program. You know, right now we're still struggling with trying to get tests for guys to bring them into the program. But start the process. Call Greg. He's our intake director right now, and he'll start the process with the guys. Just call our office and just start working on it step by step. And I believe that when you do whatever God has told you to do in your heart and you know it's right, there will always be a way to make it become a reality.
Good words. And we'll be sure to put all the contact information in the notes and the comments after this interview, so everyone has it right there if they're feeling in this moment that God is speaking to them to do that. What would you say to someone who has maybe experienced a relapse? They've been dry for years, they've overcome, but they've experienced a relapse during this time of big stress and change in their life.
Get back up. I would say get back up. The more time you spend condemning yourself or feeling sorry for yourself, it's time that you're not growing. If they have a period of clean time, then they know what to do and have done it for a period of time. And if they're still alive after the relapse, then get up and learn from it. Figure out what happened, what did I stop doing that I was doing before, what am I experiencing in myself that I'm not dealing with, what's going on that led me back to this point that I said I never wanted to get back to. What happened, what's going on in my life, what's going on in my relationships, what state are my relationships at. Just take time to evaluate what happened, how you got there, and figure out what needs to change in your life. But first and foremost is get up. You're not the only one who's ever relapsed. You're not going to be the last one to relapse. Don't stay down. Don't sit there and beat yourself up and feel sorry for yourself, because that's exactly the mentality that's going to keep you there. Don't throw away. A lot of times guys will look at it like I screwed up. Recovery was a waste of my time. I just wasted a year and a half. I'm right back to where I was. And that's not true either. You're not right back to where you were. You're still moving forward. This is part of maybe a process for you in moving forward. You're encountering a new area of your life and of yourself, and maybe learning more about the cycle that leads you into the relapse. So pick yourself up, dust yourself off, keep walking forward, learn from it, get stronger, let it develop you in your recovery. Don't let it define you as an individual. So.
Good. Andrew?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, life is messy, and you're going to make mistakes. Everybody does, and if we beat ourselves up for that, we'll end up believing all the lies about ourselves, and then we'll just give up. No hope. Even a guy that gets sentenced to life in prison, they need that chance of parole. You ever notice they give you a chance of parole after 20 years? Well, I got that chance. There's a chance that I can get free, because a guy that has no hope at all is just a dangerous guy. He's dangerous to himself and everybody else. And so never believe those lies. I mean, anybody that I know, a lot of successful business people now that have helped us over the years with projects and things to try to build these villages of hope and places. And man, they could all tell you so many times when they failed in their life. And so I agree with Greg. It needs to be part of your learning process. What do I learn about me? Use that as a tool. I mean, you need to address it serious. Don't brush it off. Like some guys say, I had a little slip, and they just blow it off and try to convince everybody they're all right, and they don't really address it. I disagree with that too. I think you need to take it very serious and address it, but use it as an opportunity to learn about yourself and what can you do different going forward. You made a mistake and you fell into a rut. We have so many habits, relational ruts, all kinds of different ruts that we fall into. And then, the feelings that it produces and the way our brain automatically reacts to it. So if we can go back a few weeks and start analyzing, what happened in the last couple of weeks building up to that, and maybe sit down with a counselor, maybe get on the phone with somebody, and ask and work through those questions, because it's a great opportunity to learn about you and how to be able to self analyze in the future before you go and you blow it big time. So definitely don't give up. It's just an opportunity to learn and keep moving forward. I think in addiction, the only time we really lose is when we give up. Just never give up. I messed up so many times in my life. I was the king of relapses. I tried to. I didn't know much about addiction. I was just trying to kind of do it on my own. I wish I had a Village of Hope to go to back then. When I was trying to get clean and sober, I knew nothing about addiction, and I failed so many times. Mm-hmm. But it's just that I just never wanted to go all the way back to where I was. Mm-hmm. And so just never give up. Keep moving forward. There's a lot of people out there that'll help you and that care about you.
Our time is rolling on here, but maybe just a couple more questions. I'm wondering what you would say to teenagers today who are growing up in a world really quite different from the one we grew up in even 20, 25 years ago. Lots available to them. What would you say to them?
We do go into schools a lot, and I've talked to some here in Canada. And in schools, we don't use scripture or things like that as instructed in Canada. But we tell the kids, everybody was born for a purpose. We all got one fingerprint. If you ever feel insignificant, there's 7.5 billion people in this world. Look at your fingerprint. There's not one other one like that. That's how special you are. And so I believe that everybody was created and born for a reason and a purpose. And everybody has something special about them that nobody else has. And so we begin to ask some of their dreams and things. What do you want to do when you get bigger? What do you want to achieve? And there's all kinds of things that will come against that in life. Hurt feelings, there'll be abuse, there'll be all kinds of other things that will try and steal that away from us. And so I always encourage them to never allow anybody to steal away your future, to do whatever it takes to achieve that. And a lot of times we have to learn the power of forgiveness, how to let things go. We have to learn how to receive God's forgiveness for the things we've done, or how to forgive others for what they've done to us. And there's all kinds of ways that God has made it possible for us to achieve our destiny, I believe, for our life. And drugs and alcohol in my life, that was just a tool to distract me and nearly destroy me. And I'm very fortunate that I didn't die in my addiction. But that's just something that could have stole away every, I didn't know that there was a Village of Hope inside of me, just waiting to come out someday. I never knew any of those things, but God already knew that, I believe. And so I had to not give up and to continue to press on.
Greg, any words for teenagers tonight?
I would just say, whatever you're going through, you're not the first one to experience it, and you're probably not the only one going through it now. You're not alone. Reach out to other people. Find people you can trust to talk to. But a lot of times for me, I used to think nobody could understand the hurt or the emotions that I was going through. It wasn't worth sharing it, because what's it going to do anyway? It's not going to change anything. It just kept me locked in a place of being alone. Even though I was surrounded by friends and outwardly I could appear like I was doing well, inside I was alone and hurt. And I had no idea how to be vulnerable or how to talk about it. And I thought nobody else would understand. None of my friends seemed to be going through the same thing. And so I just got locked in doing things that were unhealthy. But my encouragement would be, you're not alone. You're not the only one that's experiencing what you're experiencing, and you're not going to be the last one. There are people out there that do care and are here to help and want to see you live a very healthy life. So don't believe everything you hear on social media. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that go on in the schools and within teenagers and with friends, and sometimes one person that's hurting is hurting other people, and then that person reacts, and it just, everything gets carried way too far. Whatever you're going through today is not the end of your world. Like Andrew said, there is a village of hope inside of him. There's so much inside of you that you're yet to walk into or experience. Whatever you're going through today, if it's a hurt or pain, it's not the end of your world. So.
Great words, not just for teenagers either. Great words for any age to hear that. Guys, how can people, I know this has touched some very real places in people's lives. How can they learn more about the Village of Hope, the ministry that happens there? Maybe there are some out there that have just sensed God wants me to support this ministry because they're doing great work. How can people learn more if they want to support, or even if they just want to reach out, if they want to reach out for help?
Well, if you need help, you can just call the office. It's 368-2600 and ask for Greg. Shelly will put you through there, and he'll start the interview process. If you want to check out our website, you can go to villageofhope.ca. We're working on a new one, actually should be out in the next 2 weeks. But meantime, the one we have will give you all the information you need to be able to either get involved in the program. How can I do something? How can I support it? Maybe sponsor an individual, become a Hope partner, where we have people that sponsor for $35 a month. They sponsor a student. They get a student card that they can pray for them, sponsor them, encourage them, things like that. So, even if you've lost somebody in addiction, and this is some way that you can continue to fight against that, is to support someone who is still there, that and still trying to make it and overcome this. So yeah, you can check out our website, call our office. We'd be glad to talk to you. Greg would be glad to talk to you and let you know the process that you need to go through to get in. It's not a tricky process without the COVID. That's our big hang up right now. But usually we're just looking for a desire. Does a man really have the desire to change his life? And if you have that, there is hope. You can make it. We've all made it through. And we continue to work on our lives, of course, all the time. But there's still areas we need to grow and change in that never ends. But you can overcome these addiction issues. It's very possible.
Good. I think that's a good note to end on. As much as I hate to do it, this has been great, guys. I thank you so much for taking time. I know there is no limit to the work that you guys have to do there at Village of Hope. But thanks for taking time for us tonight. And for everyone who's been watching, we appreciate it so much.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you having us on here.
Take care, guys.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
What a great couple of guys, and what an amazing ministry at Village of Hope. These guys clearly aren't guys that like to toot their own horns, but I know from conversations we've had in the past that the success rate helping people overcome addiction at Village of Hope is significantly higher than a lot of other institutions. So we highly recommend them, we support them, and we encourage you to support them too. Maybe you want to be a Hope partner, as Andrew talked about. look into them tonight. We'll post all the information about Village of Hope at the end as we wrap up tonight. I love how these guys said, we aren't competing with anybody else. We're all on the same team, and they just want to help people find hope. And we believe that hope begins with a relationship with Jesus Christ, and they do too. And so, glad you've joined us tonight. I love the story too about the guy who sold them the land for $1, 200 acres. God spoke to him and said, I want you to give this real estate for a ministry to be founded here to help men and possibly in the future, women who are battling addiction. And his response, rather than saying, man, I don't know if I can give that up, was, who am I that God would choose my land? How cool is that? God's helping people find hope and overcome their addiction at this place. So if you or someone you know needs some help, I encourage you to give Greg a call or send them an email. They'll get in touch with you. They'd love to talk to you. And I'm wondering maybe too, maybe for you, you don't feel like, well, I'm not really an addict. I don't need help. But maybe you've noticed as we've watched tonight, some of your habits have changed during this lockdown. Maybe you used to have a drink on the weekend or a couple drinks on the weekend. Maybe now it's kind of an every night thing though. And maybe you're starting to scare yourself a bit. Maybe to deal with the anxiety and the fear that you've felt during these days, you've gotten more into weed and things like that. If your habits are scaring you, and if your loved ones are starting to be concerned for you, I encourage you to reach out to these guys. Reach out to us if we can pray with you. care@woodstockwesleyan.org is our address where you can send prayer requests. We would love to join you in praying and support from you or offer you support. And listen, this is all tough and sensitive stuff. We're in your corner. We're not going to blab your information around. Your information is safe with us. We're not here to spread rumors. Hey, speaking of that, did you hear the rumor this week about butter? Well, listen, if you didn't hear it, I'm not going to spread it. Oh, you thought you were going to get away 1 week without a dad joke, weren't you? Sorry, we can't do that here. Listen, guys, next week, we are welcoming 2 new guests in to talk about a different face of addiction, pornography addiction. Sean and Helena Bonato are the founders of Secret Habit, a ministry designed to help people battling pornography addiction, and to support those who've been wounded by a spouse's addiction. You're not going to want to miss this important conversation. I've so appreciated your warm response the first couple weeks now to Thursday Night Live. It's been nothing but a pleasure to put all this together, and I've got to give a shout out at this time to my tech support, Luke Shaw, for all his excellent editing and putting the polish on this thing. He truly is the secret sauce behind what you see here on Thursday Night Live. We look forward to seeing you next Thursday night, and if you don't have a church that you call home, we'd love to have you join us online this Sunday at Woodstock Wesleyan. Find us on Facebook or YouTube. For now, good night, and we'll see you soon.